Talk 9 Foreign Policy of Peace in Light of Chinese Modernization. Well, Dr. Zhang, in terms of foreign policy, as we all know, the Chinese government has repeatedly emphasized China will never join the pursuit of world hegemony. However, this idea, for a lot of scholars and politicians in the Western society, they keep a very skeptical attitude. Why?
I think this has something to do with their way of seeing things. They are too accustomed to seeing things in the Western perspective. I think when they are evaluating China's promise of not pursuing world hegemony, they were drawing on their own Western modern history. I mean, most capitalist countries since modernity in the West, they developed themselves, they expanded globally, most of the time by using military force, by conquering other countries, by forcing their ideas on other nations.
And in the ancient European and even the modern European history, they did have a very, very, long record of wars.
That's right. So perhaps that is why some Western politicians and scholars would take it for granted that a major power, a strong country, must necessarily will seek hegemony.
Oh yeah, it reminds me of a very leading politician theorist, political theorist in the late 20th century. That is Samuel Huntington from Harvard University, and in his book, The Clash of Civilization and the Restructuring of the World Order, and he argues that China will be like the previous Western powers, like Britain, like America, like France, like Germany, would join the pursuit of world hegemony. Because culturally speaking, China is in the same line with these powers in order to cater for the need of modernization. And he also mentioned that, and culturally, we are different from the Western culture. In this sense, his conclusion is very interesting. He said, well, it is the difference, the diversity of cultures that give birth to the rise of wars. What do you think?
I would disagree. This idea of the clashes between civilizations or the inevitability of such clashes, I think can be traced back to or are deeply rooted in what is known as Western centrism. And the idea of the hierarchical view of different world civilizations that was brought about the Western centrism.
So you mean that although he has awareness of the diversity of cultures, the difference of cultures, however, he failed to really elaborate on the essentials of the cultures.
Yes, and on the equalities between different cultures. Now, his idea is that, in fact, that is the very core idea of Western centrism. That is, European civilizations, including American civilization, are superior to non-European, non-Western civilizations.
Yeah, the West and the rest.
And according to them, according to Western centrism, the West is the best. And the non-Western civilizations can only be deemed as cultivated, as civilized, if they follow the steps of the European, of the American civilizations. So the modern history reveals that the Western centrism, along with the expansion of capitalism in the entire world, has been forcing the Western values and cultural ideas to the non-European, non-Western countries. And with this forced manner, with this coercive way of promoting the Western ideas, the clashes between civilizations would become inevitable. So I'm saying the conclusion is the inevitability of the clashes between civilizations is only the conclusion from the perspective of Western centrism.
So you mean that only by means abandoning Western centralism and the Western society could really have a full awareness of the diversity of cultures, could really take the respectful attitude to the diversity of cultures, and give the due respect to the other dimension.
Yes, and in addition, only when the Western countries get rid of Western centrism, when they begin to view themselves in a critical way, can they truly recognize the importance of cultural diversity? Otherwise, they cannot correctly recognize themselves, and they cannot truly understand the other nations, the other cultures.
Oh, it's really a huge task for them to take.
Yes.
And let's go back to the Chinese modernization, talking about foreign policy. And we say the Chinese modernization in this respect is a peaceful rise, and it's a peaceful development. And why and how?
Again, first, I think we should have a look at the fine traditional Chinese culture. The idea or the importance that has been attached to the idea of seeking harmony and coexistence is deeply rooted within the cultural genes of the Chinese nation. In the previous talks, we mentioned the example of Zheng He's voyages to the South Sea and as far as Africa. Back then, the Ming Dynasty boasted of perhaps one of the greatest maritime forces, but it was not used for military conquest. Instead, it became a vehicle, a symbol of peaceful cultural exchange. And then we can have a look at the modern historical practice of China. Ever since the founding of the People's Republic of China, China has always been and will continue to be a promotive force in maintaining stability and peace in the world.
Yeah.
For example, we have been and we will continue to uphold the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence.
This has a very long history.
Yes, and has rich context
Ever
too.
since the founding of the Republic.
That's right. According to these principles, we Chinese people are promoting the idea that in international relations, we should promote mutual respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, and we should stick to mutual non-aggression. We should stick to non-interference in each other's internal affairs, and we should aim at the equality and the mutual benefit. And by doing that, we should aim at peaceful coexistence.
In this sense, to some degree, I think these ideas has been fully recognized even by the Western scholars, because they do interpret China in terms of foreign policy adoption as a really different power to demonstrate itself on the world's stage.
Yes, and China has proposed these 5 principles and has carried out these principles.
Yeah.
China has always been emphasizing the importance of resolving conflicts and disagreements through dialogue and consultation. And sometimes, even if China is forced to be involved in potential conflicts with other countries, in most of the cases, the conflicts would be resolved in a peaceful way.
Yes, there has been a lot of examples, and even talking about the current issues in terms of the conflicts. We all know China is really a huge major power in the Asian Pacific area. However, China is very, very patient and is keeping a very constructive attitude in terms of solving the problems in the area regional conflicts. So yes, however, I have to add in one point. And we do stick to the principle of peaceful development. However, it does not mean that the Chinese government or the Chinese military has no power or has no confidence or has no determination to defend its core interests. Actually, in the foreign policy, we say that always there's a red line, and never touch on the red line of the Chinese foreign policy.
A clear message for the other countries.
Yeah, if the red line, if Chinese core interests are violated, and the Chinese government would make no hesitation to make a very serious response to that.
Yes, and we don't view the core national interests as the chips for bargaining or for trade.
Yes, because our core interests are never for trade or bargaining. That's it. Well, to be honest, if we have a look at today's world, we do see there are a lot of problems internationally waiting to be solved. What is Chinese unique contribution?
Again, in terms of this, China is doing a lot. But most of all, in not seeking world hegemony, China is creating new opportunities for the world by developing itself.
Yeah.
China is contributing to building an open, national economy, but also to building an open global economy.
Provide public goods.
That's right. Public good and Chinese insights and Chinese inputs and Chinese strength to help the world to resolve the issues.
What's the specific and the unique Chinese insights and Chinese input to the world?
For example, we are promoting the idea of building a new type of international relations.
What are the specific nature of the new type of international relations?
That's a complicated issue, but I would like to emphasize, I think, the core feature of this new type of international relations. That is, China is trying to build a win-win situation for all countries involved in the relations.
On the principle of mutual benefits
Exactly.
and mutual win.
Right. So we don't develop our economy at the expense of other economies, and we don't just develop economy for ourselves. We always keep in mind that the world is a shared community by all humanity, by all nations. And that's why we are building this open global economy, and ultimately we would like to, together with other nations, to build a human community with a shared future.
Yes, you remind me of what President Xi says. A better world is the premise of a better China. A better world is the condition of a better China. And also, in the past decade, China provides a lot of public goods, items, and programs to the world. Talking about Belt and Road Initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative originates from China. How it will provide profits and benefits to the world, to all the nations involved in this program. And also, it reminds me of, let's say, our Global South. Actually, China take the developing countries' interests always at a very focal position. And China is one of the developing countries. And China is always keeping a very alert eye on how to, make its own contribution for the benefits of developing countries. And this is really a very unique position China take in talking about foreign policy.
Yes, so the Chinese modernization is not just modernization for China itself. It is modernization, I would say, for all the nations, for all the peoples in the world, for humanity.
By nature, it is inclusive instead of exclusive.
It is open instead of closed.
And all the nations would participate and find their way. It's a common modernization for all.
Right.